Deputy Minister, a lot has happened since the mini budget with the students outside Parliament. You know, we didn't think it would get more dramatic, but it did. And now a new minister who's come in and with a lot of promises to bring South Africa back to stability. And you are his right hand man and contributed a lot to the budget. So, what excites you the most about the budget?
Look, I mean, the first thing I think there is general consensus now about the need to act. So I mean, and under normal circumstances, you'll have a lot of heckling and engagements on what direction to take. But everybody understands that we have got to do a couple of things. One is fiscal consolidation, restore the fiscal credibility of South Africa, and then I think the budget has done that in a quite determined way. The second part, of course, is that we need to really begin to look at growth seriously. I mean, and I think a whole range of measures included in the budget and the new investments are actually pointing to that direction. The third is economic inclusivity. I mean, we cannot have growth without inclusivity, I mean, inclusiveness. And I think already, I mean, in the budget, everybody's talking about inclusive growth, but general across the country, everybody speak that language. But the last important probably factor, which is sometimes undermined, is an emerging strong, broad partnership between government, business, labor, and communities around economic development. And that's very critical because remember that most of the growth comes from private investment. Without private investment, there is no growth. So we need to look at what are the hurdles preventing private sector from investing.
Did you have a discussion about the rating agencies and how the budget could alleviate the pressure coming from that sector?
Look, I mean, in putting together any budget, you consider a whole range of factors. That included, of course. I mean, whatever they say is important. I mean, they've raised a number of issues. One of them, of course, is that we need to go the route of fiscal consolidation, which we're in a sense, it's important that we go that route. But there was a whole range of issues around growth and etc. So it's an important voice, and it's an important determination of how we move forward. So yes, we did look at them.
And when it comes to tax, it looks like it's the sinners that really get the harm and not the poor.
No, you must go back and read it properly. I mean, it covers everybody. Of course, you have to protect the vulnerable and poor. And we've always adopted that stance in taxation. I know there are people who are saying that why don't you increase VAT? The problem, I mean, is that you probably, when you introduce tax, you must understand, firstly, it's politically sensitive, but more importantly, I think if you deal with it in a careless manner, it can damage your economy and damage growth. So it's an act, you need to really look at it in a very careful way.
Well, I mean, I meant with the sinners by syntax, like the smokers, the drinkers, the people driving around in their cars, and there should be. I am.
Look, I mean, it's a growing trend. I mean, everywhere. I mean, if you look, most countries are beginning to take that route also equally. I mean, again, if you don't manage those kinds of activities, I mean, it translates into your burden on health and other things. So it is.
Is Treasury made up of like no smokers, no drinkers?
That's right. You have a lot of those. It's not quite the opposite.
In terms of the state-owned entities, I think there's a clear message that government is not privatizing state-owned entities. There's something far more complex and sophisticated happening.
Look, I mean, yes, we're not privatizing. We would want to maintain state control and state ownership. However, we cannot run them in the old way. That's very clear. So one of the changes that people are beginning to say is that in a constrained fiscal environment, it's better to look at new sources of financing and etc. The idea of co-investment in some, strategic equity partners in some, also getting rid of those that don't have a developmental value, and those that are and integrating those that are duplicating themselves. I mean, the idea that merge all the airline interests of government into one and create a bigger and more consolidated airline business makes sense. I mean, and also finding strategic partnerships, strategic partner for it makes sense. So that discussion will continue, and we'll see what comes out of it.
Am I correct in saying there are hundreds of state-owned entities? Are the smaller ones going to get sold off? The ones that are not?
You've got small ones that are insignificant. Again, you might find in some instances those functions can be integrated better in government departments. So in this case, why do you need a state-owned enterprise or public entity if you can do that job within the department? So you'll find, so it's a complicated process. I mean, that involves realignment, that involves integration, that involves measures, and of course some of the assets being discarded in some form.
In Klankla Nene, is he sitting on his farm right now watching the budget, feeling satisfied that his old department is going on the right direction?
I hope so. I don't know.
What, you haven't spoken to him?
Then I do speak to him, but I don't know. That's private.
I can just picture him sitting on his farm in KZN. You know, obviously he would have liked to have been there, but I'm sure from his point of view, it's good to know that the department's in good hands.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does.
You don't like to speak too much on that. The levy on tires and the tax on sugar.
Remember that the levy on tire has always been there. What we've done is to formalize it, integrate it into the revenue system, as it were. Something that has not been the case. So I think all what we're doing is to formalize it. I mean, tire revenue has been there. The sugar tax, it's an increasingly important instrument. I mean, we're facing obesity, we're facing sugar diabetes, etc., etc. Managing that part is critical. You know, the consumption, sugar consumption, is as important as tobacco in some instances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, the issue around SARS. I know the minister said that some quite exciting announcements are going to be made in the next short while. What is happening at SARS and where we seeing it going? What are the big announcements that are coming?
No. The minister was saying, look, I mean, SARS is working very well to achieve the targets, you know, that are set for SARS. But the minister was saying that I think there's a lot of discussion. I'm sure you saw press articles around some of the challenges, etc. We are saying at the moment that we will deal with those issues, and we're dealing with them, and we'll ensure that there is stability in the institution.
In other words, step one, get the budget out the way. Step two, deal with the headaches that are there.
That's essentially the point. But it's doing well. It's stable, by the way.